Kia ora and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with New Zealand artists. I'm your host, Mandy Yarkich. These conversations are intimate, uplifting and insightful. The guests on the show have absolutely enriched my life, and I'm sure their stories will have the same effect on you. Thank you so much for joining me to listen to these amazing people speak about what drives them, the way they work, and their personal takes on life. Marcus Hipa is a Niuean artist born and raised in Alofi, Niue Island, currently living in Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland. Drawing, painting and carving are some of the mediums he uses to explore and share insights of his people's history and culture. Marcus moved to Aotearoa New Zealand at age 17, attending the Elam School of Fine Arts at the University of Auckland, completing both his bachelor's and master's degrees. His work celebrates the values, traditions, progress and sense of community and sheds light on social and political influences affecting the Pacific people in the Pacific region and in Aotearoa. We talk about Marcus's experiences at art school, not long after moving to Aotearoa from Niue. He discusses the gestural, intuitive, graphic, lineal and figurative aspects of his work and the way he enjoys to make. He dives deep into 3 of his artworks created in 2022, Petals Adrift, Heroes Scrape Coconuts and Smoke Signals. This wonderful episode is brought to you generously by Creative Communities Scheme, Auckland. Kia ora, Marcus.
Morena, Mindy.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. It's lovely to meet you. And we've had a lovely time in the garden this morning looking at my massive black taro patch.
It's very impressive. No, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just great to have the opportunity to share and to meet up and talk about our work and our craft. Yeah.
Really nice for you to give me a few hints about my artwork as well, because we have something in common with sort of a sense of line in our works.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what it's a valuable thing as an artist to share those insights and what you see about each other's work. And, it's a valuable thing. I appreciate it.
Totally, and I appreciated it too. And it's something I never really have because I'm kind of locked away in my studio.
I think like most of us.
Yeah.
So, no, that's great. I love seeing work. I love meeting artists and seeing their work and making that connection and having those conversations.
Yeah, it's really great. So you were born in Niue and raised there. Can you tell us something about your childhood and then how you come to Aotearoa?
Right. So yeah, I was born in Niue, Alofi Niue, raised. I think like most artists, most creatives, their earliest memories tend to lean towards creating. I don't know if that's just because we are still creating or, but yeah, my earliest memories are of just drawing, always drawing. Art has always been a part of my life. Well, it's also helped me in my life growing up. My family's quite creative, definitely musically creative. And it's funny, when I think artist, I think musician, even though I'm a visual artist. I was that young kid carrying my old man's, the DJ gear and speakers and listening to them play. They're an amazing band. So yeah, just I think having that environment where creativity is valued, where taking the time to practice and to come together as a group, I've always seen value in that. And even though mine's on a different kind of tangent, it still has that same kind of energy and that support from my family.
Yeah.
When I say art has always been a part of my life, it's been a way of I think finding acceptance as well. As a young person, you're impressionable. We moved to Australia when I was quite young. We were only there for a few years, and obviously with, moving to a new country and, the difficulties of merging into a new society, new school and everything, you don't have much in common. But once you start drawing, all of a sudden, we all speak the same language, and there's an appreciation for that, and you become accepted, which is interesting as a kid. It's things you look for.
Yeah, and sometimes that's kind of a way to connect, isn't it?
To connect, definitely.
Yeah, and to sort of gain some kind of affirmation from your peers.
Yeah, which is funny enough, it's quite important when you're young.
Yeah.
And then, but we were only there for a little while, and then we moved back to Niue, and the same thing again, you're an outsider again, even though you're from there. And it was through my art, that made that connection with my peers, if you will. And it just kind of moved on from there. But I'd never taken it like anybody. You don't think about it as if this is going to be a career. Even when you're 17, you're deciding what you're going to do to go to uni after school, I don't know if I trust my 17-year-old self to choose my future.
Exactly.
Yeah. But, growing up there, living off the land, that community, that work ethic that's drilled into you, because that's a necessary part. A lot of things people don't realize, that living in paradise is hard work. Everything you want to eat, you have to go and grow it and hunt for it and that sort of thing. And
Can you tell us a little bit about Niue?
So Niue is the largest raised coral atoll in the Pacific. It's predominantly limestone. It's a very jagged, very rugged kind of landscape. Beautiful. You wouldn't think beaches when you think Niue, but you do think, chasms and water pools. There is no rivers or lakes, so there's no effluent going into the ocean, so it's just purely crystal clear. But that would have been difficult, I think, for our people, when we finally arrived there, to have to go down to the caves and get fresh water, and it's just been so jagged. It would have been a difficult life. But so, technology and time and everything. It's a beautiful place. I love it. It's still my home. My family and my friends are still there, and it's been a huge part of who I am, and also in the creativity of it. At school, I didn't really do art at school. I did tech drawing, which is kind of more design and graphics and that sort of thing, and not computer either. It's your 3060 squares and your construction lines. And then near the end of my senior year, an artist named Jessup, who had studied at Elam over here, Niuean, born and bred in NZ, his dream was to move back to Niue and teach art, and that's a noble thing, to move back to, or even to move to a country you never lived in on your own. That takes a passion for somebody. And was
he seeing that there was a gap in, qualified art teachers in Niue?
I think there's that, but there's also a bit of self-discovery for himself, when you're living somewhere else. He was living here in Aotearoa, and, he wanted to find out more about who he was or who his family is, where he comes from. And I hope he found that. But, he tapped me on the shoulder and a few others and convinced us to come down to the art room, the room that nobody goes to. There's no resources in it at all. And then he showed us his work, and it was just stunning, just something we'd never seen before. And I was hooked, and I signed up. It was a bit of a coup, I think, but I didn't even know why I made that decision. It's just something that felt right, Definitely wasn't logical.
No, and you probably weren't thinking that was something that you could make a future of, as you said.
No, definitely not. I mean, when you're that young, you don't think that far ahead.
And so it was, a lot of it was just feeling so inspired by his work.
Inspired, definitely. It's very isolated back then. We didn't have the internet. I was very fortunate. My grandfather, he subscribed to National Geographic and Time magazine for us as kids, so that, we could read and learn about the world. And I think that was it. And then I did art. The curriculum for school cert at the time was Māori art, which we had no idea what Māori art was. We got faxed like a few black and white terrible pictures of Māori carving and kowhaiwhai and stuff, and that was kind of that was the basis of our year.
Really?
Yeah. It was. When you look at it now, I'm like, God, we must have butchered that so bad. We had no idea what they meant, what they were made of. The images were so sketchy. And we just pumped it out, I think, the best that we could. God knows I'd never want to see those boards again. But
and was that sent back to
that was sent here
to New Zealand?
Yeah, for marking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were sort of within that New Zealand curriculum?
We did New Zealand curriculum at school. You speak English in class and that sort of thing, which is different from my father and them. They weren't allowed to speak English at school. Those were the times. And then I came here and I did my 7th form at Rotorua Boys, and the art teacher there was, he was like, you should think about art school. He actually applied to art school for me.
Really?
Yeah, he did.
How great is that? Another fantastic high school art teacher.
Well, they see more than we do. They also are aware of, that these young people, myself and others, they're probably not going to do. They're not going to do what's necessary or what's required to take that extra step. Just slack young men sometimes, and you need guidance. Good people. Like Solid, like my family, and like this teacher.
And did you actually come here by yourself, or did your family come with you?
No, I just came. Yeah, it was a scholarship that was to Rotorua, and then I came for the interview. It's funny, I came up for the interview at Elam, and everybody was, I think the fact that I was so naive, I had no idea what I was applying for. I didn't understand the relevance of not only art school, but, this art school. And everyone that was there had everything prepared. They had their portfolios, they had folders, the tripods and all that sort of thing. And I just rock up and I just throw what I have on the ground. You just want to slap that guy. But I think they saw enough in the ideas that I was kind of pushing through and saw potential, saw something that I didn't see. And then when I actually came to art school the following year, I've said this before, but it's definitely the realization that this is something that is taken seriously and people are invested in it. And if you're going to do something, just really lean into it and commit to it. You only get out what you put in. And people say that all the time, but it's true with art, And I found that at the time, I probably didn't do it as well as I could have initially. I wasted a bit of time.
I'm sure that's a very common thing for students at Elam, especially coming in at age 18.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're so young.
And how was it? Must have been quite a culture shock for you coming from Niue and then coming to art school, which is, I think, a lot of students struggle with that sort of shift into art school anyway. How did you find it?
I definitely took full advantage of the free time. Like I said, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I look back and I think, I imagine what I could have done in those initial 2 years if I just, but you don't know. You're just so, it was definitely a culture shock, just getting to meet different people. You're in the city, I signed up for everything, just having fun. And fortunately, I think I failed my 3rd year. It's good to share these things because, it's helpful.
Totally.
I just wasn't putting in the effort. And fortunately, I had another chance, and sometimes we need a bit of a kick up the butt sometimes. And then I was put with Brett Graham at Te Toiho, and he's an amazing artist and still a really good friend. And I learned a lot from him, not only for his work, but just the amount, the passion and the effort that he puts behind his work, the meaning of it. And I've taken a lot of that and put that into my practice as well, as long as other people. Yeah.
It would have been great to have that kind of role model.
Absolutely. He is, he did art history before he even did fine arts. And so there was that knowledge. And that's kind of one of the things that I take as well, that it's not about just how the work looks or whatever. It has to have some meaning, has to have some intent, some that navigates and pushes the work. The work is supposed to be, an outcome, I believe. It doesn't have to always be like that, but that's how I work.
Yeah.
And that's what drives the work. And yeah.
And what kind of work were you creating at art school?
So when I went to art school, I had no idea about modern art or Renaissance art. All of that was new to me. So I was just soaking it all up, and I was just replicating just for fun, just to kind of try it out and see if I could do it. Where I grew up in Niue, it had to be real to be good,
What do you mean by that?
Like it had to look real.
Realistic.
It had to be realistic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the same as well. So I'm not putting that on anybody. And then you come here and you're realizing, when you go to art school, that it can be more than that. It doesn't have to be as well, but it can be.
There's that whole other world out there.
Absolutely. There's the ideas and the feelings and the responsibility. I think there's a lot of things that I took, and I try to put that into my process when I'm creating. It was definitely more realist initially,
right? Because
that's kind of how I was. I was quite young man, competitive, and I was fortunate enough that I had some great artists, great students with me who were as competitive as I. And you just try and draw the best you can, and every week there's an upmanship thing there, which is silly, but it is what it is.
And that were you drawing, because you do have, people do appear in your work quite a lot now.
Yeah.
Were you kind of, was it more about that sort of thing, people, than landscapes, or what sort of work were you actually creating?
Yeah, it was never landscapes. No, it was always people.
People, yeah.
People or things, objects. You remember, there's not much in terms of shops where I'm from. If somebody wants a Michael Jordan poster, somebody's going to have to draw a Michael Jordan poster,
Yeah.
But I'm grateful for that time in my life when I did commit so much to that kind of trying to be, realist and perfectionist, I guess, because it did give me the skill to do what I want to do.
And it's a good base.
It is a good
to what you're doing now.
It is.
You do need those skills.
You do need those skills, but then now you kind of you can let it go.
Yeah.
I mean, you being competitive is good when you're young, because it does. It's a motivating thing. It helps you to it drives you. But then you realize later on that you don't actually have to compete with anyone other than, I guess, who you were yesterday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was a real big part of my practice was dropping that competitiveness. Because you are once you do that, you're always, somebody else is setting the bar, and you're always looking to somebody else instead of yourself.
Yeah.
You should be looking within and bettering yourself and your process and your art and
not comparing yourself.
And not comparing yourself. And also, you're not trying to be better at anything. You can't quantify better, and it's not good for your practice. So that was a big, big step in me moving forward. And once you let that go, you're just free to make, without that. And plus, let's be honest, there's 400 million people who could probably paint better than you and draw better than you as well. So why, I'm not saying don't give up, but, focus in a bit on who you are and what you're doing and who's it for. Yeah.
And what stories you're telling.
Yeah,
and why.
And why is a big one.
Yeah.
That's another one, question yourself always. Why you do what you do? Why does it matter? Who does it matter? Who is it for? Do you have a right to do it?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to things of your past and your culture or your heritage, no matter where you're from. It's once you delve into anything to do with society or culture, it's other people, and you have to factor that in. Be as authentic as you can, and I guess at least if you're coming from your point of view, your perspective, your experience, I think it's a lot more truer and more safer, I guess, as opposed to just straight representation of this culture or this thing.
Yeah.
That's when you can kind of step on toes.
But we had this discussion a bit with Dagmar in that episode, which kind of led to talking about cultural appropriation and use of cultural symbols and that kind of thing.
Yeah, the appropriation conversation is one that's, it's a difficult conversation. It's a necessary conversation. But I think if you can make it, I mean, if some other part of a culture or a country or something like that has a real element in who you are, and you express that in your work from that point of view as an influence, as a positive influence, as a part that has kind of led you into the direction of where you are living or how you're creating, I think that is fair. I think you can come across that way. Because you're acknowledging that it has that influence on you, that it has a genuine influence on who you are, and it inspires you. If I'm not Māori, and there are, I love the work that's being created here in Aotearoa and the history and all that comes up. But I did do one drawing where, the kōwhaiwhai at my hostel when I was here for seventh form, there was a little kind of ode to that in one of the corners of my paintings, because I was talking about that age where I was young, and that's relevant, and that's relevant to me. And it wasn't the whole piece, and I'm not trying to represent that part of the country. That was just a part of who I was and a big part of me moving here, and it was a relevant part, and it's almost, just an homage, really.
That's right.
Yeah. But if I start popping that all over my work, I get, you can definitely get into murky waters. Yeah, just keeping it true, authentic to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally agree. So you left art school, was it 3 years or 4 years?
We'll go with 4. I left art school, and I had a young family, and I just started working. However, I did go back and do my master's part-time, and this is a conversation that I've had with family and other friends as well who've looked at doing postgraduate study. It has to be for the right reason, For me, I hadn't been in the conversation, or haven't had those conversations, about art, about creating. And so when they were rejigging the University of Elam, they offered a lot of the students that had done quite well an opportunity to come back and do their postgrad in half the time. So I thought, wow, that's a great opportunity. Half the time, half the money. But my reasoning going back had nothing really to do with just getting the degree. It was just to kind of get back into that space and have those conversations and be around it and be inspired. And
did you feel like you had to do that because you were not actually making so much? I
wasn't
at that time?
making so much.
So
I did the odd piece.
Get back into the environment.
Yeah, I did, and it was good. But also, I was working full time. I was working at a steel mill at that time, and that's shift work, day and night shift, and I think I was just really tired.
And how are you feeling about working full time in something that wasn't your art practice?
I'm able to compartmentalize, I think.
Yeah.
The priority was just, my family. Like a lot of people. As soon as you have kids and family, and they become your priority, and so they should. I've never looked at it as, that kind of held me back. It should never be. That's your responsibility.
So you were thinking that you would always...
But I would always...
have your art practice somewhere.
There was never a doubt that I would always...
It was always there.
I was always going to... Even if I didn't admit it to myself, I always knew. And then going back to my master's, but I was just so tired. I'd finish a night shift at 7 a.m. and gun it to uni for a few hours, go home, have a couple hours, get back to work, and
exhausting.
And the tutors there were, Peter Robinson was the head of the school then, and they were really understanding, but I think hindsight, probably not a great idea. The intent was there.
Did it help you with your practice?
It did.
It ignited something.
It definitely ignited something. After a little decompression, after all that, I couldn't paint for another year. I was just so burnt out. But it did. It definitely did. And I think that's what I mean by when you go into further study, go for the right reasons, for yourself and learn from it. And and it was a few years later I decided, you know what, this is what I have to do. And so I gave myself 3 years, and I built an art studio on my property, and I realized how privileged I am to be able to do that. But I knew I had to make that investment in order for me to do what I want to do, to paint. I had to be close to home, at least initially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
wow.
And then I quit my job, and then a month later, COVID came along, and
so that was 2020.
Yeah. So I'd built the studio, and I'd painted for at least a year and a bit.
Yeah.
Year and a half.
And you were thinking about quitting your job so you could be a full-time artist.
Yeah, absolutely.
How amazing. And what helped you with that? What got you to that point where you thought, okay, this is my time?
You know, I've spoken about this with a lot of artists as well. And I was like, you know, you're on the sideline, you're watching all these other artists that you admire, and also all these young up-and-coming artists, and you're like, this is what I should be. This is what I want to do anyway. You know, but you just got to make that decision sometimes. Make the call. You know, that way, if it works or it doesn't, at least you've given it a crack. And so I built the studio, and then I just painted anything, you know, everything, just get it out there. And initially, a lot of the work just looked like what I'd done at uni. You know, there'd been no progress, no progression, no development. It was frustrating. And then I then you do your research and you look at artists that you would like or that you admire or things that and because of the internet, there's just so much out there. And then you just and then I made the big mistake. I decided I just wanted to go absolutely crazy, abstract kind of, all that sort of thing. And it was terrible.
Really?
The work was crap.
And what was it like?
It was really bad. You know? And that was a learning moment too. You know, when I look back, and this is looking back at myself, you know, you're really, you know, this is a bit of arrogance there, I think, to think that you can just change the way that you work without developing it. You know, like who do you think you are that you can just pick it up? And when other people, other crafts, other artists have been working on this for years. And that's when you kind of have to really look into yourself and look at your work. For me, as an example, I looked at it and I had to think about what is it that I mostly enjoyed about the painting, about the creating. And for me, it was the blocking out, the drawing part of it before the painting is done. So you draw it out. I used to be quite planned, you know, your layers, and then by the time the painting is finished, sure enough, yeah, you know, people love it or like it or whatnot. But the best part of the process that I enjoyed, no one would see. No one will ever see, you know? And that's what I mean by looking into your own practice. I was like, why? You know, it's frustrating, you know? And I was like, well, you should have seen it before it even finished. And so I thought maybe that's something I could explore. And so that's kind of how I've come to where I am right now. And who knows, it could move on from that. But that is that kind of sketchy, drawery, painty element that I have in my work, which I'm enjoying. Yeah. So
and that's when that really developed.
That's how that kind of started. Yeah. And it still took a long way to get to where I am now. And it's still evolving now. You know, I was in the studio last night, and just before I came here, I looked at my work from my show at Scott's, and it's like, it's already changed. You know, it's already evolving even more. There's so much more layers and depth, but I wouldn't get to where I am now, where I was last year, if I hadn't really taken that time to look at myself, at my practice, at why I'm doing what I'm doing, even just from a technical point of view. You know, like I said, you know, my work was, I'd copied Renaissance, I'd copied a lot of other stuff when I got here. And also there was the influence, you know, late 90s, early 2000, there was that big Pacific push as well, which Doug mentioned as well. You know, you got your Fatu Feu, your Andy Lesiao and John Pule and Michael Tuffery, and they were really blowing up then. And I think a lot of my tutors then, a couple of them were like, you know, you could really go in this direction. And it would have been easy for me to do that because I grew up in the Pacific. You know, a lot of that was about finding identity. I could have just jumped on that wagon. And those were genuine discoveries and journeys for these artists. But for me, if I'd done it, it would have just been fake. You know,
wouldn't have felt genuine.
Well, it wouldn't have. You know,
Yeah.
there's no journey. There's no trying to find myself. I grew up in where I came from, and that's looking at myself. So you have to do those kind of things. You know, be honest.
Yeah.
But in that kind of thing, I was kind of lost as well. You know, so what do? I don't know what I'm doing.
And that's where time is such a sort of important part of the puzzle, isn't it? Just allowing yourself that time so that can be developed and you can work through all that uncertainty or, you know, when you're not quite sure where you're heading with work. It's just, you've just got to keep going and going, don't you?
You do. And you got to reflect on who you are and be honest about who, you know. There's so much to think about when you're creating work, and at sort of young age, you're just pulled in so many different directions, not only creatively, but just in your life and your commitments and your obligations and wants and needs and influences. Yeah.
So your work does celebrate the values and traditions and progress and that kind of thing of Pacific communities, and often is referring to Niue.
Yeah.
And you can really get a sense of that through your work. But can you please describe your art practice for somebody who may never have seen your work before?
It's quite expansive. It's definitely very gestural. It's very intuitive. I think when I look back at it, if I look back at it objectively, you know, it has maybe a lot to do with my original kind of graphic drawing in my younger years, you know, the constructive lines. But I've just taken it to another level and, funnily enough, taken it away from the straight and industrial to the more organic, you know, the figurative, the ideas. But it's definitely more gestural. It's that, I think it's one reason, not only why I enjoy it, but also it's the genesis of that idea. You know, when you're sketching, you know, that you're building up something and it's an enjoyable part of it. And after that, it just becomes work. Well, it used to. You know, once that creating, that's where the creating really happens, in those gestural lines. And then after that, the planning comes in and the layering and how the light works. And that kind of takes away, it puts you in a different space. And that's why I kind of stuck with that, because that's why I enjoyed it. I didn't know why I enjoyed that part, but I knew that was something I wanted to explore.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And that kind of leads into where I am now, how I paint. So
and those gestural lines are kind of, they feel like they're on top of the work, but they're also underneath.
Oh, they're layered. Yeah, it's not a technique, if you will. It's not like I, you know, do one layer of paint and then the lines on top and that's the piece. It goes back and forth. You know, there's washes of paint and then it's scratching in of the wax pencil, and then washes of paint and then pastel and oil stick, and then back with the paint, and then etching in with the back of the pencil, you know, scraping away, and that's bringing through the layers of paint and the lines from previous iterations of that whole piece. So it could be, oh God, sometimes it can be like 20 layers of work.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's of paint and drawing and oil stick and stuff. And that's just because that's how I'm enjoying it. It's really intuitive at the time. There was an exercise I did to let go, and that would be to not lift the pencil when I started drawing, you know. And it wasn't like again, it's not about technique. I'm not going for technique, you know. If I wanted to draw something like that, I could anyway. Because I put that time and effort in, but it's more about just being intuitive and letting go. And then I just ended up loving it. So that's what I mean. You just got to try different things and they'll kind of feed into your practice.
Yeah.
And you don't know which way it's going to go. And now when I create, if anything, the more technical aspect of it is in the initial kind of mock-up painting drawings that I have. You know, like if I want to paint a sky, I'd see images or paintings of sky that I like, and I'll kind of try those out in my own way, and then I can see if what works. But then it's not a straight transfer of that onto my canvas that I'm working on. I just hope that in some way that will bleed in when it comes to that time, if it happens to come in that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is, I mean, those gestural lines very much give movement to the work. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, they give movement. I mean, there is movement when I'm creating those lines. I paint directly on a wall, generally loose canvas, and that came about from just working, from realizing what works. I had your stretch canvas on frames, and I wrecked so many of those.
In what way? Just cutting through them?
Just cutting through them, just denting them, and because I'm really kind of quite aggressive on the canvas. And then I'd get frustrated because the line's not as clean or something, because it bounces. And so I would just use unstretched. I decided, unstretched canvas on the wall, and it was perfect. So it came about in the process of working out how I work, not like I have this vision.
Yeah,
I'm going to go against the grain, not frame my work, and people will accept it because it's honest and true. It just happens to be practical about the way that I enjoy working. Yeah.
But that does add to your work, doesn't it? That the looseness of the canvas.
Yeah.
It brings another element.
And it's rough, and my work is quite rough-ish. It kind of goes back and forth from it. But yeah, because it's honest, and it works because the way that I work, I had to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah. And quite often you leave a space around your drawings or your paintings. You don't always go up to the edge of your canvas.
No. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. I think, again, I'm really enjoying the work being created on the canvas as it goes. Like, there's no planning. There's an idea. You can't have some idea of what you're doing. But it's evolving on the canvas as it goes. And if it feels like it, just like that scraping coconuts, that I had this whole landscape plan in my mind for that. But as I was doing it, I was just like, I'm just going to leave this white. I had a good conversation with Scott Laurie when I first showed it to him at Scott Laurie Galleries. And he was like, he was quite unsure about that. And I you got to respect that, other people are going to have their thoughts about your work. Just could be kind of honest and
stand true to your sort of initial idea.
Yeah. Scott is an amazing guy. He's been really supportive of my work, and also in like when we first had our first conversation, and he was like, this is going to be a team effort, and I'm going to be honest, and I said likewise, and it's quite a really great thing to have, with somebody you work with, to have that kind of constructive kind of criticism, honesty, because you both just want to get the best out of outcome out of this, He wants his artists to put their best work out, and he, as a gallery, has to put quality as well. And so it's got to work both ways. And I'm just grateful to have those conversations.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And Scott is so incredible in that way.
He is. And the space that he created at his gallery, not only to for the audience, for people coming in, they all feel so welcome, and that because galleries can be quite a stark place,
Yeah, no, it's very different, isn't it? Even the way there's the kitchen in the corner, and
it's brilliant.
I love that. It's kind of homely in some way, but also a beautiful gallery space.
It is. It's a great space.
So back to your work, it would be actually interesting to talk about a couple of works in particular, which I find very interesting, and I'm sure the listeners would as well. So can you please just talk about Petals Adrift, and perhaps talk about the story and what you're trying to say and what you're representing, and also your use of colour and line and mark making within that.
Right. Petals Adrift, behemoth painting, 3.5 meters by 2, loose canvas, oil stick, wax pencils, spray paint. What was I thinking? Again, I still have a close connection to my home, Niue and the Pacific, and climate change is a big issue, and it's something that I'm aware of because how it affects people that I know, the home that I have, not only in Niue but in all through the Pacific, and I know I just really I felt like I needed to highlight that in some way in my work, and for, to create a conversation, have that conversation that's going on, or adding to that that's already there. And also, how could I show that? And I thought the petals. So the petals the idea of the petals comes from the icon of the Frangipani, Ciale, the Pacific Frangipani, and they are supposed to represent the pillars of our community, of our people. Your culture, tradition, language, family, and I'd replace them with waka, and the people scrambling up onto the waka, and the water is rising, and the petals are drifting apart, essentially. It's a very, it definitely, it makes it, I was kind of going for, this kind of urgency.
Yeah, which it really
frantic
has that. It feels frantic.
Yeah. And the colors I used, so I used the blue and the green I used blue and green from Google Earth to, because it's an app, to kind of bring it to today, that it's something that's happening right now. And the yellow and the reds of the people, the figures are like sunset colors, as in the sun is sitting on these people. The whole thing about it really was that, if we don't change, are you a people without a land? And how does the culture survive that? How do those people move on? And those are conversations that are happening right now, Tuvalu, Kiribati, these king tides, the whole island. Niue is lucky, at least, but that doesn't mean that we won't be affected. The reoccurring weather patterns and the warming of the waters as well. People have to go further out to go fishing now, and that's another danger. There's so many things.
Yeah, many influences.
But yeah, so I tried to bring it to today with the colors. One of the figures is holding an iPhone right in the middle, you try to make the connection.
Yeah, I like that.
So there's little circles of crosses in them dotted amongst the waka and stuff, and you're supposed to kind of, you've had that conversation, if your house is on fire, you have 3 minutes to grab the most important things. So you're kind of, you're giving an opportunity for the viewer to kind of fill that spaces of what they would think. What would you take?
Yeah, which is so pertinent to New Zealand, with even Muriwai.
Absolutely.
That situation with the cyclone and landslides and people having, 30 seconds to get out of their house.
Absolutely. So not even be able to go back.
Yeah.
So it's relevant to so many aspects. So it is, again, like I was saying earlier about how it's relevant to you, that's relevant to me, but it's also relevant to other people, our other countries, other societies, and things that we can relate to. And hopefully we can have a conversation and start working things out.
Absolutely. It's such a beautiful work.
Thank you.
So let's go on to talking about Heroes Scrap Coconuts, and that's the one that we touched on before with the one that was at the Scott Laurie Gallery.
Yeah,
and that one has a sort of one central figure, and it almost has a sort of sci-fi feel about it.
It definitely has it's a Marvel character.
It is
Captain America,
right?
It was how was it? I was thinking about home. I was thinking about how proud I am of the upbringing that I had, and how much I miss home and my family, my friends, and just the land and the sea and the food. God, the food. And I really wanted to, they're my heroes. Those that are back home, singing the songs, teaching their kids, keeping our culture and our language alive. And so I felt like I needed to do that piece, and I thought, what is a hero in today's kind of element? And that's your superheroes,
Yeah.
And initially, I'd kind of gone with the Asgardian kind of thing. I thought that was more closely aligned, the village kind of setting, the warrior, but the character of Captain America, the character is supposed to represent honesty and patriotism and hard work and defending those and that's kind of why I chose that character. But I went with yellow because yellow is the color of our flag, the Niuean flag, and he's just scraping a coconut into his shield. So just by that really menial domestic task, he's keeping that culture alive, and I just wanted to kind kind of acknowledge that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And then you have quite a lot of sort of symbols and, connecting to your place, so palm trees and...
Yeah, so the two coconut palm trees, they're not just there for no reason or just to be honest. So when you are given a plot of land for a plantation or your home, to build a home, the first thing you do is you plant two coconut trees. And that's the kind of... It's not like a border or anything. It's more an acknowledgement that this is now your plot or your land, but it's not like yours as in you now own it. It's now your responsibility to look after this. And so that's what those two palm trees on the side of Captain America are like. This is his responsibility or our responsibility to keep this thing alive.
That's so great.
Yeah.
What a cool story. And that's such a...
Simple.
It's simple, but I think you can read into the story by looking at it, but there's more to it. And it's really nice to hear you speaking about it.
Oh.
Yeah. Can we also talk about smoke signals, which I find quite intriguing just from the title?
Yeah.
Can you describe it and then talk about why you've used this animal in this way?
Right. So smoke signals, from the name, smoke signals, it's a form of communication, very old, I guess, over distances. But also, like Petals, I was talking about the effects of climate change on our people. And so it's supposed to be a cow. Well, it's a plume of smoke or pollution, really. So it's like when you look up at clouds and you can see, your bunnies or whatever it is that you kind of see.
Yeah.
So in this plume of smoke, I'm seeing, a cow, and the cow is coming from or standing on the continents of Asia and America. And we being the Pacific, we're nestled between them, locale-wise. And there's supposed to be a sense of heat rising, as in, the global warming effect. And we are... Yeah, we're just being smothered in the smoke and this pollution. And on the cuff, you've got on this mane, if you will, there's a kind of imagery of a forest, and then on the tail, it's been kind of cut down from monoculture, which adds to less diversity, which creates then runoff and that sort of thing. And then you've got the people in the middle pulling each other up, similar to like Petals, they're struggling to kind of survive there. And one of the figures is pointing at one of the continents, just kind of saying, this, we need your help, or this could happen to you. So it's just creating a conversation,
like sort of
and awareness,
reaching
out. Yeah, but ultimately it was about the heat coming up. It's
so clever, and I love the way the legs of the cow almost feel like sort of skyscrapers or chimneys.
Well, they're coming from chimneys.
Yeah,
it's smog.
Yeah,
yeah, and it's kind of evolved into this kind of shape that I see, and that
that's so clever. And I love the way you've got that beautiful sort of what feels like a sky behind the big cow or the cloud, which is very the pinks and the whites. It's very gentle. It has that lovely sort of contrast.
Yeah, well, it's funny enough that we had a conversation with an artist before, and they were telling me that and he was in California, like they have amazing sunsets, but it's also because of all the pollution and the smoke and all that sort of thing, So there is I don't know if you want to say that there's a beauty and tragedy, but I just try to, my work, I try to at least touch on, start conversation, add on to what's been there. Right?
And these pieces we've just talked about have such strong narratives. Does all of your work tell stories in this way, do you think?
No. God, that would be quite stressful, I think.
Quite a responsibility.
It would be, everything you have, everything you make has to mean something.
Yeah.
I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as artists like that sometimes. Sometimes you can just create to create. There's nothing wrong with just making for the joy of making, just something for yourself.
Yeah.
But also I feel, at certain times we do have a responsibility to have these, put out something that actually means something for you. There's a responsibility that you have for whoever you are or where you come from, especially if it's needed to highlight. So you can kind of go back and forth from that.
And how do you communicate your stories with your audience? Are you happy for them to take what they want when they look at your work, or do you like to write something to go with your work?
No, I think the audience has to have the chance to interpret it. I think you can kind of give them breadcrumbs. I do, by when I talk about my work or a small description, but it has to be, I won't give them everything laid out. Whenever you look at work, you bring your life experience anyway to the piece for the 10, 15 seconds you stand in front of it, and then you move on. And
7 seconds apparently is the average. 7
seconds, yeah. And then you go and, order your Uber green Thai curry and
off you go.
Off you go.
Yeah.
But I think you have to allow the viewer to bring something personal to it. That's what makes that connection.
That's what art's all about.
That's what it's all about. You're supposed to, bring a bit of beauty in someone's life for 7 seconds before they go and then you're only one traffic light or one cut off from God knows what happens in the city.
Yeah, totally. And it would be really interesting for you to talk us through the process from that blank hanging canvas on the wall.
Yeah.
How do you build up your work, and how do you bring in the different mediums that you use?
Yeah.
And how does the story develop? Do you actually think of the story and then work out how to create it, or does it evolve?
You have to have the idea of the story or the message first. I have to. It has to be narrative driven, definitely, whether or not it's serious or not, but at least have some idea. First thing I do is I grab chalk stick or whatever and just start scribbling all over the canvas. There's nothing more intimidating than a white canvas. I'm sure you know. Just get some marks on there. And then it's just, just pencil it out, really. Just have some fun, tattoo around, and then start layering paint and just keep building it from there. Yeah. It's very different from how I used to work, but that's how I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
And you said before you use washes.
So I work in oil.
In oil.
So there's a lot of terps in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terps, yeah.
Yeah. I need that. I like it. It gives a bit of transparency. I'm not a patient man, so it dries a lot quicker. I work on at least, 2, 3, 4 painting pieces at a time for that reason. Working in oils is frustrating when it comes to dry time, especially in winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that adding extra terps makes it dry quicker.
Makes it dry quicker, but also just gives it that transparency because there's so many layers. I couldn't afford to paint straight on anyway, and also because of the mark making, it allows a bit of that to come through. The layering to come through. It wouldn't work as well if it was just thick straight paint for my work.
No, and it does have that sort of. It feels a little bit like street art sometimes, and it definitely
has that urban kind of thing. And
element.
I love using spray paint. And funny enough, I'd never used spray paint before. We were given that 24-hour kind of go and get supplies. We're going to lock down the country, Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. And I ran up to the studio and I didn't have, I had paint, but you know what you need. So I just gunned it to Bunnings and Hammer Hardware or whatever, and I just grabbed as much as I could, and then I grabbed spray paint just to give it a crack because that was all they had at one store. And now I use spray paint in a lot of my work.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you, COVID.
Thank you, COVID.
And how do you apply that, or how and when?
Oh, I'm just so we're clear. I'm not very good at. There are the amazing graffiti artists that have this amazing skill and understanding of how. Yeah, I'm not that guy, not at all. I use it as just because I'm enjoying it, and also I'm loving the way that the material works on the canvas and how it builds up the layers and how I can draw on it. So
it's really kind of adding colour in places at the moment. It's not really about making lines, isn't it?
No. It's just another tool of mine that adds colour and adds a lot of the layer. And it's a wonderful contrast with paint and with the wax pencil and the oil stick. Like it's an interplay because it's so soft. It gives a nice kind of mist kind of texture and color, and its blending is so pretty as opposed to the stark line and the brush strokes. So they work really well together, and it's just come about from the way I'm playing with it. It's not anything intentional initially.
And it feels like it kind of fits with your process, as in the way that you actually apply things to your canvas. It's all quite gestural. And
very much.
That. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The things get thrown at their canvas, I assure you. Frustrating days,
So good. It's really interesting to hear about your process and how, serendipitous COVID was to help you discover spray paint and other things.
But a lot also, especially in that COVID time, was the people that you have around you, I was fortunate enough to have met a lot, quite a few other creatives, and to have, you like the whole country, you're in lockdown. So to have that chance to kind of call or text or, have those conversations while you're all locked down was really important, I think, just for mental health.
Yeah, totally. And do you see that as a time in the 2020 that you really started making a lot of work?
Yeah.
And
I decided to.
Yeah.
I didn't decide on locking the country down. I just want to make that absolutely clear. It was not my plan. But yeah, it was a hard time for everyone.
It was very hard, and it's really has had so much influence on artists, hasn't it, in different ways?
Oh yeah, I mean, being an artist is already quite an isolating thing, but at least you can still get around, But just that complete bubble, isolated from your loved ones, it was really hard.
It was terrible.
You're hearing about all these deaths around the world and countries being locked down, in Italy and whatever. It was scary, We had Trump.
Yes, that was scary.
Yeah, it's always scary.
Very scary. Yeah, it was a crazy time. So you had your first solo exhibition at the Upstairs Gallery in Tirirangi.
Yeah, I'd had a few group shows here or there, Fortunately, I'm quite an outgoing guy, so I just rock into galleries. Hey, how's it going? My name's Marcus.
Really?
This is what I do. Got anything coming up, Yeah.
So good, and you rock in with your paintings.
And I'll just rock with my phone and go, hey, this is some work, and they'll be like, okay, crazy guy, you can go, or that sounds awesome, and I'd shown at Corbin, I'd shown with Emma Tavala Vunilangivo, and Upstairs gave me a spot in one of their group shows, and then straight after they're like, hey, we got a spot, let's just come up. It's just around the corner if you want it. And I was like, yep. Walk out, have a slight heart attack, and then you just gotta get out there.
Yeah.
Not only just for yourself to show, but to be to see what's out there. Be current with what the landscape of art is in Aotearoa and Tāmaki Makaurau in Auckland, and meet people and have those conversations.
Since 2021, you've had a solo exhibition, and then you've been part of other group shows like the Heterodox Us at Franklin Arts Centre in 2022.
Yes.
And also part of the Nomadic Gallery in Belgium.
Right.
That sounds really interesting. Can you talk to us about that?
So Arthur and Jeannie, the Nomadic Art Gallery, amazing couple, came here to NZ because they just, they really wanted to find out, they loved work from this part of the world, from this country, and they just wanted to travel the country. They bought a truck, which they then lived in, and I think they were challenging what a gallery is. How like most artists, you create your work in your studio and you approach a gallery, and they wanted to be a gallery that went to the artists and exhibit around the country from their truck, and then meet artists and have conversations. And then after that, get the artists to then create something small on the truck itself. So they have their truck. It has like 200 artists' works on there,
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just, what a great way to spend a year in lockdown, traveling around and just meeting people and having conversations. And then in doing that, they are then creating connections between their artists.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love everything about that.
Yeah.
So how did they find you, and how did you become part of it?
Obviously they met some other artists, and they were like, hey, you should check out this other guy, Marcus Hipa. And they came around home, and I grabbed some sardines and things. I was like, we just had a little chat, and then they were asked if I wanted to be a part of the truck and if I wanted to do anything on it. And I said, sure, I'll have a 5-minute conversation about you. What have you done, or what do you love? And then I based the piece I did on that conversation. And I used spray paint, which I, again, wasn't used to using, but time, I had half an hour to crack this thing out. So that's part of you being an artist. You kind of have to figure out, what works in that space and kind of be, a bit of ingenuity, bit of moving around, bit of flexibility, and now and then fortunate enough, when they left NZ, the truck is still here in Waiheke. I think it's looking for a permanent spot. But when they opened up a gallery in Belgium, and they asked me to be a part of the inaugural group show. So, that's just one of the great things about doing what we do. You get to meet great people, have these opportunities. Making connections, genuine connections,
And you sent your work over there.
Sent my work over there in COVID. Yeah, and also, funny enough, it's a learning curve for me as well because of COVID, they could only really take smaller pieces. Just the freight had just gone up so much in that time. And I paint in large scale, and they were like, "Oh, we love your work, but we can't take marker size works right now."
Really?
So I had to work smaller, and
you couldn't just roll up your canvas.
No, the piece was massive. So, and then I did my work, but on a smaller scale, and it just looked so terrible. It's just like postage stamp kind of things, It doesn't work at that scale. So I had to change the way I worked, and I did ink paintings, and it worked. It still had the same feeling, but worked better. It's things that you learn about in practice.
That's interesting. And sometimes it's good to be kind of pushed into or out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then you can be surprised with what you actually come up with.
And I still do those, if I'm waiting for paint to dry, I'll knock out a few doodles of just kind of keep working. You have to keep working.
And it's such a different way of working, isn't it? It's a lot more controlled and sort of...
Which is everything I was trying to get away from.
Yeah, which is where you kind of came from in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of full circle.
Live and learn.
Yeah. Well, that sounds an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
And then in 2022, you were represented by Scott Laurie at the Scott Laurie Gallery. Can you tell us about that?
And so I had a solo with Scott Laurie, and in conjunction on the other side was the Moana Artist Show, which was curated by Sefton Rani and Andy Lalesiao.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was, that's the perfect storm, really. I get to, I was just really grateful to have that opportunity to show my work as a body of work, which I'd never seen either. You work on these pieces and then they sit in the corner or in tubes or whatever, to see it all up in one. So I was really grateful for that.
That's a great opportunity.
And then to have the Moana show on the side and to meet all these artists, and see their work. And I think there were like over 400 people at the opening of that. It was just an event.
Yes, that went off.
When
And they were both amazing shows.
And Sean Hill was in that, who you've spoken to. Asin is also was there. Linda and Alison. It was so many cool artists there.
And so were they people that were already were you a part of their community?
Some of them, yes. Some of them, no. Some of them I met for the first time. Carlos was in that. He's a curator and gallery, runs Upstairs Gallery now, and he was in that show as well. And he does just amazing work. That's why you do what you do, really, isn't it? Not only to share your work, but to meet others like-minded. And
and that's why it's good to get that work out there so that you can start making those connections.
Yeah,
and it's such a big moment in your career, really, to start having solo shows and that kind of thing.
It is. Yeah. I've been very lucky. I'm not, I know that in the short time that I've had, I've been able to do that. And I'm very grateful. But also, you just have to keep working. That's what it is, and putting yourself out there. It's a vulnerable place to be, as you know. Yeah,
but you've just got to do it.
Yeah.
And so where do you see yourself going from here with exhibitions? You've obviously also had the window. You were part of the Windows into Modern Pacific Art as well.
Yes.
North Art.
I always work in bodies of work anyway. So I'm just going to work. I already have an idea, a body of work that I'm working on that I was supposed to show Scott, and I'm going to finish that.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to keep going. And
would you approach galleries with that body of work, do you think?
I think if I see something or somewhere where it seems like it would be a good fit, then definitely. But yeah, I think because of the last 2 years, there's just been a lot of networking, a lot of group shows, a lot of things. My shows, I think a lot of it took away from the creating as well.
Yeah.
End of the day, it's got to be about the work. You got to put in the work. And a lot of that takes away, not in a bad way, but all that moving around takes away time from you creating. So even though I am creating, I could be doing more. I want to be doing more. So that's where I'm going to focus for now.
It is hard though, isn't it, to get the right balance?
Huge.
Yeah.
Balance of different aspects of the creative life, balance and family and friends and
everything. Yeah.
That was the beauty of seeing, my show at Native Practitioner at Scott Laurie was to be able to see my work together as a body of work, to be able to appreciate it as a body of work. I think that is what you want as an artist, to kind of give context to your work, give people the opportunity to kind of, it's hard to tell from one painting what somebody's thinking.
And seeing the conversations between paintings.
My work are always kind of linked. They're not directly linked, but they have conversations between them. And to be able to fully immerse yourself and look around and get the viewer to kind of get a better understanding of who you are and what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
That's why I think galleries are important.
Yeah.
But like I was saying, it's just creating these bodies of work. And it's going really well. So it'd be kind of cool to get that done and have that under your belt and then move on to another one. You need to build up a stock of work as well, so that if anything comes up, it's like, boom,
you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I learned that from a lot of artists, Sefton as well. You learn so much from these other artists. One thing I learned from Andy was that you need to take time. Let things percolate a bit. I usually, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it's gone. Whereas, now I kind of pull it aside and bring it back a few months later and say, that's helped me in my practice. And you be open to learning from everybody.
So a lot of our guests lately have been speaking about the communities, the artist communities that they're part of, and how that sort of inspires them and makes them feel supported through their art practices.
Yeah.
So how do you find that, what sort of communities are you a part of, and how does that help you, do you think, as an artist?
I'm part of a few communities. I have my, I think it's really important to kind of, I think in creating, just like in life, it's about having good people around you, really. People that you can be yourself with, that you can be open to and open to learning from, people that, question you as well for your own benefit. I think one of the things that I do, and when I meet someone or when I've gotten to know them, I tell them what I think of their work was when I first saw it. That might be a conversation, maybe 5 conversations down from the initial meeting, but I feel like I need to share that. And I think it's taken quite, it's a valuable thing to hear, I'll be like, what, it's great. When I first saw your work, this is what I thought. And it's just like, it could be way off,
but
or it could be close. But I think it's really something that's nice to valuable to kind of hear.
And you're being respectful in the way that you do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's one thing I've learned, like I said, when I was at uni, you learn so much if you're open to it. I don't think I'd be where I am if it wasn't for certain people that helped, not direct me or persuade me, but just giving me the option to kind of see that there were other ways, other avenues for me to move in my work, and also to see them and how they work, and take parts that would work for you. And that's what a good community is, and we're being really supportive. And like Dagmar was saying as well, just having that it's not even a safety net. It's just having those people that you trust. I also have an issue with, and I know this is probably not a great thing to say, but there's a lot of thing about safe space, I think safe space has its place, but also in creativity, I think sometimes you need to be out of that space. You need to be challenged. It's confronting, can kind of bring out different elements in who you are and the work that you have, and having a bit of pressure, the timeline, whatever it is that causes that for you, can be helpful sometimes. Otherwise, you just become complacent. And I think having those people around you, good people, good community, they're always checking in, can tell you whether or not you're being a bit of a dick or you're just kind of carrying on the same work.
And potentially sort of challenging you.
Yeah, you're not moving. What are you doing now? You did that last year. Where are you moving with this?
So
because
good.
you want them to do better, and you want to hear that back as well. But it's also a hard thing to hear. A lot of people, I miss critiques from uni. That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, but it feels like, especially in the Pacific Island communities that Dagmar was speaking of and Sefton, and it feels like it's quite a unique part of those artist communities that you have that as sort of an expected thing that you're supporting each other and encouraging and challenging.
It's part of our culture as well.
Yeah, and you're bringing your culture in. Yeah,
but it's in a different way, but it still translates.
And what would you say to people who don't feel a part of an artist community? What advice would you give them?
Oh man, everyone feels the same. Reach out to. If anybody would reach out to me on Instagram, it's anything I have. So, reach out. I'm happy to meet people. Most artists want to meet other artists, especially those that are trying to move in that direction, who have made that decision to move forward. Most artists I know are pretty happy to talk to people. I know I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're all kind of in the same boat.
We are. Everybody's winging it.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there. What you're going to hear is no. And that's more a reflection on the other person, not yourself. Yeah, but it is a scary thing. But yeah, I'd say reach out.
And Instagram is a great way of communicating, and that's your sort of sole commercial platform at the moment.
It's the only one that I'm able to use. Yeah, I use it like I mentioned earlier. I use it the way that I see it as a kind of quick insight into other artists' work, and then that's a leap of a jumping pad to have a conversation about their work, and then that just kind of leads on to other things.
Yeah, and I do love the way the Instagram is like a online gallery for your work.
Huge. It's Visually, it's also scary.
It can be quite lovely. Yeah,
so saturated. So much work out there.
Yeah, and you can spend so much time sort of on it.
Yeah, get off it. Get in the studio.
Get off your brush.
Phone. Pick up your camera. Grab your chisel, whatever it is.
Go for a walk.
Yeah, just do the work.
Yeah. Okay, Marcus, I think we're about to get on to our final question.
Rightio.
What would you say to your younger artistic self?
Stop mucking around. No, what would I say? You know what? I would say take the time. I would say to my younger self, don't be afraid to take it seriously. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable, to ask for help. Don't be afraid to tell people you don't know what you're doing, even though you want to, or even if you look like you know what you're doing, just because you can do it. Question why you should do it. Find some good people and just be a good person. Yeah, pretty much.
I'm sure you were that.
Yeah, there were elements of that. Yeah, yeah.
And who would you say would be your favorite artists?
I guess I'm in the privileged position that I've able to work, and I've met a lot of my favorite artists. There were those. Like I said when I first got here, there was that. The big Pacific push. Your Fatu, your John Pule, your Michael Tuffrey, Andy, Saleh Jessup, and I've been able to work with some of them and learn from them, but also, Brett Graham being my tutor, but also learning a lot about the culture of this country that I live in as an important thing, the indigenous culture, the original caretakers of this land. I think that needs to be acknowledged and learned about, and the way that they work. I think definitely if you're looking at other artists, Hammond also was just that letting go, that looseness and that transparency of color and the figures, that's universe. Hotere with just the scale and that intent, I think, of the work, if I look further, like like when I first got here, it was like your Michelangelo and all that sort of thing, because it was just new to me, and I've always been drawn to the figure, and I mean, I guess Picasso's work, not so much the work, but just I think I found an affinity with him when I saw how he was, the work that he did when he was younger, and how it transitioned to when he was later on, and how it had moved. I kind of make a connection with that, because I was so intent on getting everything so perfect and so right. And now that I'm kind of going in my own direction, was a lot more loose and a lot more expressive, I see that they're kind of parallel there. And I always had that kind of affinity with them. Not so much the work or his lifestyle, but just in that aspect.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So those are the things that you can take from there's so much to learn, and I have so much more to do and to learn, and I hope I can kind of contribute as well to.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
I mean, just, people listening to your story and how your art practice has developed and what you've gone to and where you've come from. It's just really interesting.
It is.
And inspiring to hear these stories.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I got from listening to your guests on the podcast as well. You can kind of relate, you can gauge, if you will. Okay, yeah, they're just like me.
Yeah,
or I could be doing this.
Yeah,
or that's something different. We're always learning. So that's a really great thing that you're doing. Really,
thank you.
Yeah.
And what would you say is your biggest challenge as an artist? Time. I think every guest has said time.
It's time.
Yeah.
And
what drives you to make the kind of work that you're making at the moment?
I think there is a responsibility for the message that I'm putting out, but also a responsibility to those that supported me. The best thing that we can do to show those that have supported us is by actually following through on what we said we're going to do. And that's do the work and show them that, their investment hasn't been misplaced, or, that you value them. You value the people, you love them all. Yeah.
All right, Marcus. Well, thank you very, very much for coming out to Muriwai. You've never been here before.
Beautiful.
So I hope you come back with your whānau and come and see us sometime.
Absolutely. We'll pop in and check out the Black Taro. And
Yeah. Oh, it's been lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. Really grateful.